Good evening, and thank you for being here. My name is Courtney, and I'm a master's student in the MAIS program. In this presentation, I explore how masculinity and gender are dynamically conceived within the cultures of mixed martial arts, or MMA. Literature and media point to MMA as a site of hypermasculine norms, one that serves to perpetuate gender stereotypes and highlights difference. This presentation examines how MMA fighters and practitioners manifest stereotypes of masculinity in such a way that perpetuates the gender binary. In my work, I'm drawing from a variety of gender and social theorists who posit multiple ways that gender is socially constructed. While gender in itself is difficult to define, the underlying questions examine how members of society produce and reproduce gender. For one thing, gender informs and reflects our deeper social and cultural values. When we are talking about gender, we are talking about the ways femininities and masculinities are produced and reproduced in discourse and action. Gender is constructed through language, gestures, body language, our social actions, and reinforced through our social relationships, our norms, and expectations. We perform, enact, wear, and play gender. Gender impacts our perceived roles and placement in the world, and in an examination of gender construction is really an examination of the reproduction and representations of social norms, expectations, and supremacy. This is particularly true in the context of sports. Modern sport is an institution that affirms categorical superiority of male bodies over female bodies. Social sanctions placed on female athletes include being either too athletic or too feminine. Female athletes are forced to navigate the paradox between the social expectation of femininity and the athletic world of masculinity while condemned in both. At the end of the day, participation in sports requires a navigating through masculine norms. So, in the context of MMA, this is what society tells us we should expect to see: scantily clad ring girls, masculine men fighting. But what we may not expect to see are masculine women fighting. In terms of gender hierarchy, masculine attributes such as aggression, violence, pain suppression are highly valued. Within this context, like most sports, MMA is viewed as a space of competing masculinities, though it is not a space comprised only of men. This image challenges the masculine norms. In my larger thesis, I incorporate female voices and perspectives into the narrative of gender norms through a series of semi-structured interviews and observations of sporting events and class sessions. In this presentation, and pressed for time, I highlight ways fighters conceive of gender. Through interview excerpts, I note here a few themes that arose, namely that gender is described in terms of physical strength difference, differences in fighting styles, and discussed in ways women were or were not accepted by the men in their gym. So as you can see in this first interview excerpt, a male MMA fighter discusses gender in terms of strength differences, where men generally have stronger upper bodies, and so when sparring or grappling with a female partner, part of gender performance is withholding strength to accommodate the sparring partner. In this example, masculinity is equated with strength and respect for strength differences. Now, in this excerpt, with a female MMA fighter, note that she also talks about gender in terms of strength difference. But from her perspective, when male sparring or grappling partners do not show respect for strength difference, the masculine strength inhibits female progression or advancement. In this way, she paints strength, male, and technique, female, as opposing methods of fighting. She describes this as being unable to work through technique when men are trying to, quote, muscle her. In addition to strength difference, gender is often described in terms of fighting styles. You see this in the excerpt with the female practitioner that gender is performative. And I mean this term as feminist theorist Judith Butler describes performativity as producing and reproducing a series of effects. In this case, the effects are creating gender binaries. Female fighters are described as having more focused technique, while male fighters, on the other hand, as employing more of their strength. Again, these perceptions of gender also create a binary between technique and strength. Now, in this excerpt with another male fighter, you will notice that he describes gender as performative, but in terms of how entertaining each gender is to observe. Aside from the clear level of disinterest in female participation, the fighter highlights another binary in gender performance, that men tend to be more aggressive fighters and women sloppy. And while this binary is somewhat unclear, what is made clear is that aggression is equated with entertainment. And finally, I brought in this last excerpt to highlight female perceptions of how men approved or disapproved of their participation in MMA. Here, the perceptions of both masculinity and acceptance are nuanced. First, there's indifference or avoidance, marked by some men refusing to train with women. Second, there is accommodation or patronization, depending on perspective, through men being overly gentle with women. Third, there are displays of male supremacy and violence, marked by some men's intent to muscle or hurt women. So what does this all mean in summary? Well, these excerpts tell us that gender is perceived in terms of the physical and the performative, and that both are felt and observed. There is a binary between men and women and their fighting styles. Men are perceived to exhibit more strength, while women more technique. And gender wasn't much of a consideration for male fighters until specifically asked about gender differences, whereas women appeared to feel their gender at all times. In this way, masculinity is privileged in the space of MMA. Women in MMA did perceive themselves to navigate the norms of masculinity by honing their technique over exhibiting strength. Finally, the response to women's participation fell into 4 main categories. 1, acceptance. 2, indifference. 3, accommodation. And 4, male supremacy. That is my presentation.